For me, my life's been really dedicated to living in the moment, to not carrying baggage with me wherever I go. And the ability to be able to set something down and just relax is super important. When you have a business that's your own and you love it and it's your baby, then it's very different. It's very difficult to have those kind of boundaries and to be able to say, like, this is a work hour and this is not a work hour. Like after 9 p.m. or 10 p.m., like I'm not going to talk about HappyCow. It's very difficult.
Yeah! What's up, everybody? Your life alchemist, your dragon. Welcome to Alchemize Life. I'm your host, Justin David Carl. This is a show where I seek out and share expertise, wisdom, and thought leadership in all domains with the mission of empowering and inspiring you to proactively design and truly live a life worth living. We're all in this together, and when we do the work together, we go so much farther, so much faster, and have so much more fun. Without further ado, let's dig into this episode and alchemize life. Eric Brent, welcome to the show, brother. I'm so excited to have you here. It did take me a little time to get you on the show. I know you're super busy. Oh, don't even worry about it. I know you're busy, and I know that you probably get a lot of requests like this, and I know that you're also more of a private person, so I feel deeply grateful that you felt that you could come on my show and share some of your story with us. And, you know, just to give the audience a sense of who you are and what you're about. So you're the founder of HappyCow, which is probably, at least in my opinion, one of the best apps if you're vegan and trying to figure out where to eat. So you have, I think, over 180,000 restaurants and grocery stores on the HappyCow app. There's over 1 million reviews. There's 1.5 million photos. And, you know, I went vegan back at the beginning of 2020, and I had like no idea where to get vegan food because prior to going vegan, like I pretty much avoided vegan food because I thought it was all like boring, bland, and didn't taste good. And then I went vegan and I realized like, oh my God, vegan food is just as good or even better. And I actually fell more in love with food going vegan than ever before, you know, both through my own cooking and then exploring out in the world of restaurants, what kind of, you know, options there were. And HappyCow has, you know, been a major, you know, tool of support for my vegan lifestyle. And I just want to say, A, thank you for creating it. And B, thank you for coming on the show to kind of share about your entrepreneurial journey creating HappyCow. And I believe you're 31 years vegan.
Thereabouts, yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. I'm barely 3 years in, so I'm probably not going to catch up in this lifetime.
No, it's been great to be here. Thanks for having me on. Definitely my story is a little undertold. I haven't made a point to make this HappyCow about me. It's a service that I created to help people, and it's my Siva to the world. It's just basically a service which, you know, I thought was needed when I created it. I don't know if anybody can remember what it was like to find restaurants before the internet started, but that was crazy. I mean, you're talking about finding restaurants. It's amazing now compared to even 3, 4, 5 years ago. But if you go back even further, that's a totally different world to look at that, how it was. And that's, you know, basically one of the main reasons I started this service was because I was traveling and wanted the service for myself. I was, you know, traveling in Asia and asking people on the street, you know, do they know anywhere I can eat? Walking around for hours in hot sun and nearly passed out, you know, from heat stroke. And always it was a huge challenge, and you end up walking for hours and not maybe even finding anything you wanted. So yeah, that's the reason why I created it is to make this a service. And it hasn't, like a lot of people do things that are more, they stand out as a personality in their business, and it helps, but it's not something that I've been focused on, and I've been very behind the scenes. I mean, some people meet me at festivals and things like that, or hear my name, and I haven't done many interviews.
Yeah. Like, doing a lot online on social media, I've noticed you kind of really, it seems like you just focus on building out the business of HappyCow and really providing an incredibly valuable service, and to kind of go back, like, can you share like how and why you first went vegan? I think that's always interesting for people to understand.
Yeah. So like I was raised on the worst food imaginable. My mom didn't like to cook. And there's actually a backstory is that her mom owned a health food store in the 1920s and 30s and was very anti-health food. My mom used to actually keep Wonder Bread in the house just to show her mom that's all she had. And I was raised on TV dinners and fried, like all the worst food imaginable, fast food, McDonald's and all that crap. And when I was 19, I switched colleges. I went first back east to school to study engineering. I was going to I wanted to get into AI and robotics. So I had a little tech background for a year, but then got interested in psychology and switched from one of the most conservative schools, Bucknell University in Pennsylvania. I switched to one of the most liberal schools, UC Santa Cruz. And I think it was probably my first year there. Some friends said, we want to go eat a vegan burger, or, you want to come with us. And I was like, a vegan burger? That sounds, scary and kind of disgusting. I never thought about where my food came from. So I went with them to a restaurant called McDarma's, and it was with the golden arches. It's like a copy of McDonald's. They got sued by McDonald's and had to remove the Mick before their name. It's just called Dharma's now. And I took a bite of this burger and it was really good. And for the first time in my life, I questioned, where was my food from? I had never thought about, like, there was an animal involved, what is normal meat made out of? And actually on the highway, I used to drive a lot between Santa Cruz and LA from where I'm from. There's a cattle, farm there that is just disgusting on the 5 freeway. You smell it from, miles away. And it's horrendous to see it. And I think that's really where the idea of HappyCow was born. It's just like seeing how miserable these cows were, and that the source of, what I'd been eating was, this misery. And if those cows, had a life, they just to be left alone, they'd be happy. And so that's really what the story is behind the name of HappyCow. But so from eating that first burger, I stopped eating meat immediately. It took a moment for chicken, and then I never really liked dairy and eggs. I had allergies, but it took a good year before I actually stopped those. I was traveling after college. I moved to Finland. I had been living in Finland. I took the train through China, and that was the year of Tiananmen Square. I was in Beijing just a couple of weeks before that happened, and saw the way that China handled food and not animals. And that was for me like another revelation. Like I stopped eating fish, which I didn't eat much anyhow, but just seeing the animals, the way they were handled in China got me to think even deeper. There were no vegan documentaries back then that I was aware of. A couple of people had read that book. It's called Fit for Life, by the Diamonds. I forget. I didn't read it. Nobody introduced me to that. Nobody mentioned the word vegan or anything like that. So it was a bit slow progression. It was probably about a year and a half total from when I first ate that burger. But so I ended up running out of money and went to Taiwan to teach English. And while living in Taiwan, I met a Buddhist teacher, and he immediately said to me, what's the difference between a cow and a shrimp? Because I was still eating shrimp, and never thought about, okay, shrimps, no more shrimp. They're animals. I'm not going to eat that. He didn't ask me about eggs, and I didn't really eat much eggs or dairy, but it wasn't until some months later that I had posted an ad for teaching English at a university, and I got a call by some monks and nuns, and they said, we're 150 monks and nuns and we want to learn English. And I was like, why do monks and nuns want to learn English? That sounded really weird to me. They aren't just meditating. I had already had some spiritual teachers in my life. And so interestingly, my girlfriend at the time had a book from this teacher in her house. And she's like, oh, you should check this out. I never did. It just sat there. But I got picked up, drove me up into the mountains, and I met these monks and nuns. And it turns out they were the Master Ching Hai following, as you may have heard, from Loving Hut.
Oh, how interesting.
Yeah, so I got a better perspective. I saw the woman, she came, Mount Ching Hai came to my, to meet me. And I was like, oh, wow, like this is the one that the book. And then I heard a tape from her talking, and I was really touched. I thought, this is amazing. And they would pick me up and drive me up into the mountains. And I would teach, these monks who were meditating no less than, I think they're meditating at least 7 hours a day, probably more. They were so clear. Like I would be teaching and I couldn't hear anything from anyone. It was just, a total awareness. I could feel the presence, just me and these very, very clear people. And a lot of them were over 60 years old. They hadn't learned ABC yet, picked up right away. So it was amazing. Master Ching Hai came and would bring me, fresh carrot juice, and they always left me with everything. But from that, I understood, leather, silk, and everything else. And that was what finalized me being, and like nobody had explained it to me yet.
Mm-hmm.
So they talked about the vibration. You don't want these dead animal skins on your body or associated with you. You're going to be picking up that vibration. And then, of course, you have to, one thing that she's done, I can say for sure, and is she got 5 million people or more to go vegan. You have to be vegan to get initiated by her teaching. So I did, her initiation. It's not my path, but I respect it. And I think that a lot of good has come from her guiding people through meditation. She was definitely a lot simpler back then. She was living in a tent, had a shaved head,
Mm-hmm.
not like, you see her nowadays. But it really, that's another thing that was clear, is clothes don't matter.
Mm.
And so there was a time when she told all of her monks and nuns, just stop, get out of your robes, let your hair grow, wear normal clothes, and just, act in the world. I think it's important to be practical with spirituality. So that's the story of how I became vegan. And yeah, it's really, it was a progression, even though I wish it had happened overnight.
I mean, you still started at a much younger age than most people. I didn't go vegan till, I was in my late 30s. That's really fascinating story. So I wanted to let you know, I actually just moved to Santa Cruz, and Dharma's, I think, was the first restaurant I checked out, because my wife and I were like, oh, we want to get closer to the ocean. And we just, we felt a call to come over to Santa Cruz from Menlo Park. And, of course, when we started checking it out, we're like, all right, what are the restaurants around here? And, we looked up, and this was on HappyCow, of course. We looked up and we found Dharma's, and I had no idea it was called McDharma's before. So that was a really cool story that he just shared with me. But the first time I went there, it's such a unassuming restaurant, but the food is delicious. And, it's not a fully vegan restaurant, but there are tons of vegan options.
It's vegetarian now. Is it vegetarian?
Yeah. Was it vegan back then when it was McDharma's?
No, it was vegetarian. I got confused though, but I think it's because, so maybe they're connected to Krishna. A lot of Krishnas still consume dairy. I guess that's the reason.
Yeah, it's definitely vegetarian, but there's tons and tons of vegan options.
Okay.
And I'm fully vegan, so it's important to me to make sure, because there was definitely I think I got a vegan Reuben sandwich, which was definitely super incredible. And there was an option for, animal-based cheese or vegan cheese, and I had to go with the vegan cheese. So,
Yeah.
okay. I'm curious, why all the travel? Like, you told me you've been to 70 countries. Like
Right.
what kicked off this travel bug?
I think it's difficult to say, what brought it on. When I was 14, I took my first trip alone to Europe. I think probably that, I was kind of pushed by my dad wanted me to have some kind of experience. So he sent me to a summer school, but I had to travel there alone. And I went to school in Switzerland. That's probably most of it. I think also just talking to people, having, friends. I think it was just interesting to me. Friends actually in high school that I had influenced me a lot. I had a Finnish friend who encouraged me to come visit Finland. And then I had a Taiwanese friend who encouraged me to be interested in Chinese culture. So that's probably where it started. I was the only minority in the Chinese club in my high school. And so I've had an affinity for that. My second language is Mandarin, even though I speak some French and Finnish.
Oh, wow. So not only are you well-traveled, you're well-versed in multiple languages.
Good enough to get by, but I love the culture and spent a lot of time in Asia.
Yeah.
Probably more than other countries. It's great for vegan food. It is amazing.
Yeah, I've heard since going vegan, I haven't made it over to Asia, but I really want to go over there because I feel like it's very vegan friendly. At least portions of it are very vegan friendly.
Oh yeah.
So
my favorite place out of all my travels in the world is actually a place in Thailand. It's a vegan paradise there. It's called Sri Tanu on Copenhagen.
Mm-hmm.
We made a YouTube video about, I think 6-7 years ago about it, but it's grown so much since then.
Mm-hmm.
And the level of, food you find and community and beaches, and there's parties every night. And yeah, it's just so easy to be vegan there. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's great. So from my understanding, when you first started HappyCow, you actually had to learn some HTML programming, start the site yourself, right? And this was at the
Right.
beginning of the internet before smartphones and apps. So walk us through a little bit of
For sure.
that initial kind of entrepreneurial, start to the site.
Yeah. So, I was traveling after college. I traveled 15 years nonstop, and I was living in India with a spiritual teacher and up in Rishikesh, and had a lot of free time on my hands. I knew I wanted to create HappyCow because I saw the internet starting. Nobody was doing it. There was some people had little guides here and there. They weren't being updated. I kept writing to the one that was called veg.org, I think is what it was called, trying to get them to respond to me. I said, so you'll help them, I'll volunteer, something like that, because I like the idea of having an online guide. Nobody was doing it. So I had a lot of free time living in Rishikesh, had a little background in computer science. I did study computers for a year in college, but definitely didn't do things the right way. And I just decided, with the push of my girlfriend at the time, to go ahead and start this. I had the idea for about a year. I held on to it, and then just figured, nobody's going to do this. I'm going to do it. It'll be my, my gift to the world. Is this? I'm going to spend time doing this. I had no idea what I was getting into, so I built a static HTML site, which, at the time, there were more sophisticated sites being built. Was the first couple of years of the internet, but that was just the total wrong way to do things and very labor intensive. And so I was living in India, and all we had was dial-up back at the time, and it was bad dial-up. I think it took 2 days straight, 48 hours just to upload the website, the first version of the website to the internet. And it was very frustrating. You'd be waiting for just one file to get transferred and one page of thousands of pages. And then obviously it wasn't maintainable to do that. So within a year, I had a friend who actually was a computer developer, a PHP developer. And he said, I can take your existing site, I can read it, and I'll put it into a database and make it dynamic. And I had trouble just wrapping my head against around what that even meant. Like, how do you connect a database to this website? I mean, I guess, like, once you understand it, it's so simple. When you're like looking at it from the outside, people have no idea what does it take to build an app or build a website. So it did get built better, and it was more dynamic but it still was never built from like the way that obviously that I would do something now, having any kind of content management system that's already existent. Everything is custom on our code, and it's definitely not the best way to build.
Yeah.
But we've gotten where we are.
Yeah. So you started it back in 1999, right?
Right.
So when, and you're going to, I don't totally know the timeline of like apps and stuff. Like, how long were you a internet site before you became an app? And then
So we were one of the first apps on the App Store. I got approached really early by some guy who knew how to make iPhone apps, and we were featured in one of the first Apple commercials on TV. And and it was pretty amazing. So he did a really good job building this app, and Android was not as quick, but it was within the first year of the Android market, I believe. So it was pretty quick. Like, I didn't understand the apps. I didn't know where this was going to go. And I figured, well, like how, if people aren't, I was primarily ad driven at the time. Like, I was making money from Google AdSense. And so I was like, well, if we're not selling, we weren't selling, we're giving, I think the apps were free at the beginning. Anyhow, it was like, there was no monetization on it. So I was like, already supporting developers and had to bring in some money. So I was like, I didn't understand how that's going to work. I think we've always had like a one-time fee for the apps until last year. And I didn't really get that model. Like, I didn't think about it too hard. I've never been very driven in terms of how I'm going to monetize. I've been trying to support the team. I have a great team working with me, people who are really dedicated and care a lot about the project. Pretty much almost everybody is a vegan and, used HappyCow prior to working for HappyCow. And a lot of passionate people, but obviously, it costs money to run a site like this. People probably don't have any idea what it takes every month, but it's pretty astronomical, like what's involved, in terms of technology and the people every month is.
Do you mind me asking how many people are on the team? Because I have no concept either.
So currently, I think we have 27.
Okay.
Last count, about 27 people. And they're based all over the world. We don't have a central office or anything like that.
Yeah.
They're a lot in Europe and in Asia and a few people in the US. And then also in other parts in the Middle East and other places in the world. Our lead developer, he's been living in Thailand. He just moved to the place where he lives is in Japan, Kyoto, Japan. And I love visiting, obviously. And our iPhone developers in Barcelona. I love Barcelona as a city.
Yeah, it's a beautiful city.
And
So
yeah,
it seems like, at least for me, I've noticed, and maybe I missed it the first like year or so of going vegan, but it seems in the last couple years, HappyCow has really built up not only like an incredible community through the app, but also like on Instagram and kind of other social, networks. And it's really just fostering like, it's helping push kind of like the vegan lifestyle movement forward. And I'm just curious if you can talk a little bit more about the social aspects of the app and the company and kind of like, those endeavors.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Yeah. I mean, social media is tricky. And I sometimes wonder like how much it's worth to spend all that effort to try to get anywhere, because they are like always changing the way things work. But HappyCow itself has a social aspect, and we've been growing that. Right before COVID, I had this plan of growing that out. I was going to make it so that if you're visiting a new city and you don't know anybody, you can just easily like say, I'm going to be at this vegan restaurant at this time and day. And then either based on your interests, HappyCow would suggest people you might want to send an invite to, or have it be open to everybody, or you could just have it so it's closed and you just invite people you want to come join you and really make it more of a social platform. We're still planning that, but because of COVID, obviously people weren't meeting in person. So we changed the plan around quite a bit. We created a feed right now so you can kind of follow people, and it's kind of like your Instagram feed, but you'll see food postings by people either in nearby to where you are at the time or people that you're following. And we're adding new things all the time. We have a big partnership with Veganuary. And we did it last year as we had a Veganuary tag. So you can tag your post with Veganuary, and then it gets shown in that Veganuary feed, which is worldwide and kind of interesting just to see what's happening around the world. Because there's so many photos every day, thousands of photos being posted. And then to think about like, what's the food like in another city? I think it's fun to check out and just see what options there are in different places. So we're working on that, and that's still evolving. We've had to take a little step back. I don't know if you realized last year, there were some big changes. And one of them was that we made the apps free. And the reason was we had a partnership with a company called Green Monday, and they do Omni Foods and Omni Pork. And so they became a partner and invested in HappyCow. And we, as a first step, made the apps free. It was pretty dramatic right away. That was obviously the best thing we could do in terms of increasing everything. It just was exponential over this last year, and especially this last summer. We had a lot of trouble keeping up because I think a lot of people traveled. The number of submissions, the number of photos, numbers of new members is just, 3 to 5 times and very difficult for the team that we have to keep up with. We recently needed to revert that. So we switched back to a paid model for now.
Oh, interesting.
Because needing to monetize. So yeah, I mean, I created HappyCow. Definitely was a labor of love, not a business for me. And it was very difficult to switch my mind and wrap my mind around it becoming more of a business, which, is not a bad thing if it's supporting a good thing. Like I had trouble feeling commercialization and these things concepts that I have learned to dislike in some ways, but definitely, run with a vegan team and in an ethical way, and monetizing by selling the app and getting businesses to upgrade has been the primary thing. And a lot of that was very organic. I didn't ever have a team working on those things. They happened, like the app sales there's been some optimization of the app on the App Store and so forth, but there's not been a lot of big investment. We don't have somebody focused in that job of, online monetization and so forth. So it all happened very organically. And when COVID hit, traffic was at 90% drop, right? Nobody was eating out. And I literally, I didn't know what to do because I didn't have a big savings to get back up, to be able to support the team that we had. I couldn't handle it from that way. So I did need to cut the team to pretty much half of what it was in size. And then realized over COVID, it was the right time. I've been running this, 22 plus years, to bring in some experts. There's so much that can be done if we have the right people. We had very good people, but there were some key positions missing. And so I thought it was the right time to bring in a partner. And so around July of last year, we started with Green Monday. And Green Monday, if you don't know, they do have a number of different things that they do. Green Monday's kind of like Meatless Mondays. They focus in corporations, getting them to eat vegan one day a week. In Asia, they're pretty big. And then they run Omni Foods, which is a mock meat company, mostly doing Omni Pork and Spam and some other things that actually are great. A lot of Asian dishes, they work really well. And they've been working on also expanding into the US market. And they've been having trouble because of what's been going on with HappyCow and our team, and expanding a lot. They brought in new people, and we've had the benefit of having some new additions to the team, especially with product management and so forth. But we're just being cautious now with trying to scale back and be self-sufficient. So we're working on some things with our friends. So we do have like a program like Yelp, TripAdvisor, and Google where restaurants can get more promotion. Obviously, we're not having any policies, no remove reviews for owners or do anything like that. But we do offer them an opportunity to get more attention to their listing.
Mhm.
And so we're working that program right now to kind of compensate. And hopefully, if that works out well, we can revert to premium, a free version of the app again in the future.
Yeah. It's really interesting. And I deeply appreciate how open you're being instead of kind of like selling me this story that like it's been all like unicorns and rainbows, like building out this company, but actually sharing how, you kind of went through a significant expansion and then, the COVID hit and you had to kind of rejigger things to kind of make sure that the company survived. Like, I can't even imagine how hard it must have been to go from like free to then like asking people to pay again.
Right.
Like that must have been a really tough decision.
Yes and no. I think for sure, yeah, it's great if it can. The whole goal I had with HappyCow was to make it accessible.
Mhm.
That's the reason why I created it, to make options accessible to everyone. And it still is. You can still use first of all, you can still use the site for free. So it's there's a great mobile version, and you can run that on your iPhone or Android just by going to happycow.net,
Mhm.
and it works great. Like, you don't need more than that. The app, adds some additional functionality. You can have the ability to save things. So if you don't have internet, you can look at it without internet. It does show it a little more precisely in proximity to where you are. You can create, which you can do on the website too, create trips and favorites. So like if you're going somewhere, you can kind of plan a trip and save listings to that trip. Those are saved offline if you have the app. There's a couple other features like the way that the search filters work and so forth in the app. There's a little bit more functionality, but basically it is still free. And it's also a one-time, so it's not a recurring fee. And it's, the cost of a bag of chips or something like that is $3.99. Currently, it's not going to break your pocket to do it. And the money's going to support this growth and the team that we have. So it's been difficult to find other alternatives. There are a whole list of ideas that could work to monetize, but you'll see there have been companies that have come with millions of dollars trying to copy what we're doing. And within a couple of years, they're gone.
Yeah.
It's not that easy to sustain. And it is the kind of thing like I've thought about often making it a nonprofit. There's reasons why I haven't done that. It is run like a nonprofit. I mean, all the money that comes in is going back into the site. And, nobody's getting rich off of this. It's done as a service, and we're just trying to grow it as organically as we can. We are open to, of course, maybe some new investors at this time, if anybody's out there and would like to have, some kind of involvement on that level, that'd be great. But yeah, it's been challenging. And also like over time, there's that. So there's the monetary side of it. And then there's also, of course, running a company for 23 years, even if you love it, is not that easy. It's challenging. So the people, don't realize it, but you go through burnout. Even like with HappyCow, I had ebb and flow.
Yeah.
And I've learned to recognize when I start reaching those points and like need to step back. And one of the things obviously is not spending too much time in the office and getting out and traveling and going to vegan festivals all over the world. So that's something I've been doing over the years. And obviously COVID took a bite out of what I could do, but I still traveled in COVID. I went to vegan camp out last August in UK and I was in Ukraine last year, and Poland, Warsaw, Poland's one of my favorite cities. Doing that for me recharges me a lot, but it's challenging for sure in that way as well.
Yeah. Hey there, just a few words about the incredible show sponsors for today's episode, and then we'll dig right back in. Today's show is brought to you by Veg Nutrition. Live better. So I'm actually a veg elite athlete, And before I joined the team, I spent months doing my due diligence to make sure that the company was vision, mission, and value aligned with me, my values, my mission, my vision, and my lifestyle. I got to know the owners super well. I even got to know the person who formulates all the products, and they passed with flying colors. So I couldn't be more excited to represent a company that I feel so aligned with. And I want to tell you about two of my favorite products. The first is the veg pre workout. So when I first went vegan, or mostly vegan, the last thing for me to go fully vegan was finding a vegan pre workout that gave me the focus, the energy, and the power that I was looking for. And I can tell you, this is the best pre workout that I've ever had. It gives me incredible focus and energy. And what's probably the best is it leaves me with no crash after I take it, which is great. And the flavors are so freaking good. There's literally peach mango and a Patriot Pop that tastes like, the firecracker popsicles, cherry lemon lime flavor. They're literally so good that I can dry scoop them. And they just released a watermelon flavor for just in time for summer, and it's incredible. So that's the first product. The second product is arguably also my favorite, and that's the plant protein. Comes in three incredible flavors: chocolate peanut butter, vanilla ice cream, and cold brew coffee. Yep, you heard me. Cold brew coffee flavor. It tastes incredible, all three flavors, 25 grams of protein, fully organic, incredible ingredients, heavy metal tested, and it is my go-to post workout. Make sure that I'm recovering and refueling and giving my muscles the protein that they need to rebuild for that next workout. So go to vegnutrition.com/dragon and try their full line of supplements, and you'll get 15% off. Or you can just use Dragon at checkout and you'll get 15% off. So that's vegnutrition.com/dragon to get 15% off. Veg Nutrition, live better. So 23 years, and you've been running this business from your home, at least some of the time, if not the entire time. And, many of us, when COVID hit, had to learn how to work from home for the first time. And I know, speaking with, lots of people who had never worked from home, like learning to kind of separate, work from home when you work from home is really challenging. So I'm curious if you could kind of share your own experience with, making sure that you have space between your work and your home life when you work from home, because you've been doing it a whole lot longer than 2 years. So if you have any thoughts there.
Right. So it definitely matters how big your space is. If you're living in a studio and you're trying to do something like this, that would terrible. I have a little office, but it's got a curtain, not a real door. And so, like when I'm talking, the phone calls throughout my place. I have a 14-year-old daughter. It's like confidentiality or whatever. Like, how do you deal with these things? So I have an external office that I escape to most days now. So that's actually been what I needed to do. But actually, as I mentioned, I never was in an office with other people. We're all remote. We're using Zoom and Slack and other tools to communicate. So I was hoping when I created HappyCow, I never really thought about it making money, but if it was going to be my life, like I'm dedicated to my life to this, and I had other income as well as some passive income that I was supported by throughout the 23 years that I worked on HappyCow, that I wanted this idea of it was it's a wonderful idea to think I'm going to sit on a beach in Thailand and run HappyCow. And, it can work with some businesses, but it was pretty challenging for me. I basically could do the minimum, but in terms of accelerating things, having a regular schedule, like waking up and stretching and doing things at a given time, and like having my routine around the day and have to worry about where I'm going to sleep tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's been something that wasn't quite as I imagined. So I think in the early years, I was able to travel and I did HappyCow in my free time and it was fine. But once I started bringing on more people and having a team, it's, the team needs some regularity as well. So there has to be engagement. We have, meetings every week or every other week. And that's really difficult when you're challenging. So I think what I found out is that if, when it was a small thing, like a small operation, that was a feasible thing to consider traveling with a laptop and working from anywhere. But as it's grown, it's really not. The responsibility is just too big to be gone for too long. So what I've been doing, I've been taking shorter trips. I go away for 2 weeks. I just was in Curacao and Bonaire doing some scuba diving, and I was connected a little bit. I'm connected a lot less, on when I'm traveling like that. I'm headed to a festival in Japan in a couple of weeks, actually next week. And so I probably will work a lot less while I'm traveling, but there's a balance. It's not easy. And I'd say definitely if you can avoid having family members in a business, like trying to run a business with a spouse, definitely a bad idea. and try not to bring it at home at all. If you can avoid bringing, that's what's great in a way about a normal job is you leave it there. You leave it at the end of the day. A lot of people can just leave their job. I considered being a psychologist and I did work. That's what my degree was in.
Mm-hmm.
I worked doing therapy with people for a little while. And that's another job. It's very hard to set down.
Mm.
And I think that's an important thing. And for me, my life's been really dedicated to living in the moment, to not carrying baggage with me wherever I go. And the ability to be able to set something down and just relax is super important. When you have a business that's your own and you love it and it's your baby, then it's very different. It's very difficult to have those kind of boundaries and to be able to say, like, this is a work hour and this is not a work hour. Like after 9 p.m. or 10 p.m., like I'm not going to talk about HappyCow. It's very difficult, especially when you love it so much and you hear about it and your friends are connected to it and you have people all over the world who are connected to you through this service. And it's very difficult to have those kind of boundaries. It's still today a challenge, but I think one thing that's benefited me a lot is the spiritual path that I have and able to just surrender whatever it is that's going on and not get too strung out about it, not carrying too much stress around it, and living in this moment and realizing like, this is impermanent. Everything is impermanent and it will change, and things can be dealt. Maybe they'll get dealt with, maybe they won't. It's just what's happening. There's no right or wrong in the big picture, and nothing matters so much as we think it does. So not getting too stressed out about things, that has been a blessing for me in my life, and definitely dedicated to that path, because although planning for the future and having big ambitions has value, at the same time, it's important for me to just realize that everything is just in this moment. And you can't live in the future. You might have these kind of goals and they can help you guide your path, but at the same time, it's not real. What's real is what you're experiencing right now. And you can have that as an intention that you're going to accomplish something. But if you start to grab onto it, or the opposite, if you're grabbing onto regret about what happened in the past, then you suffer. You're not experiencing this moment. You're not really living.
Yeah.
So that's been essential to my life, is just taking each day as it comes. And I do have goals. I have plans for the future, but at the same time, I can only deal with now.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where primary focus is just on what's happening right now, just being here.
Yeah. I'm curious, Eric, can you share more about your spiritual path in any sense? I just like, what does that look like in your
Sure.
life? Is it of any lineage or is it self-created? And
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. So when I was in college, I moved to study psychology, and I went through therapy, and I went through evolution and growing and having all kinds of cathartic, workshop experiences and doing all this work on myself. And I was trying to build like the best ego ever, to be the most functional human being I could and communicate well and get rid of all the conditions that I had in my head from, the past and all of that stuff, and burning through all that stuff. And then I met a spiritual teacher whose name was Robert Adams, and he was a disciple of Ramana Maharshi, which is a famous non-dualist teacher in India. Like if you go around India, you'll see his picture everywhere. But he was basically teaching, like the teaching was, you are not who you think you are. You're not your ego. And who you think you are, you can't comprehend who you are. Like you're never going to be able to define who you are with your mind, because the mind is limited and who you are is limited. So you remove all the concepts, everything that you think you are, because those are really what you're most not. Remove those things. And then just in this moment of just being, that's really being yourself. And that's as close as you can get to knowing who you are, is to be free of baggage, right? Free of past concepts. So I met him, and it was like 21 years old. And I was like, everything I had just done in my life was like kind of, I guess it got me to that point, but it was also meaningless. Like there was no ego, this idea of having a perfect ego. That's just a dream. It's just like, it's a pie in the sky. It's like, there's no solidity to what the ego is. And especially like macrocosm, microcosm, if you look at it from a bigger scale, you'll realize it's completely insignificant in the global universe. In the big scheme of things, who I think I am is meaningless. And nobody in 100 years, nobody will know any of this. So even having HappyCow as a business, I hope it would continue long on after I pass away. That it's a service that helps people. But at the same time, in 1,000 years from now, who cares? And how old is the universe? It's billions of years old. And so how much real meaning is there to any of it? It means something to me if I'm identified. And so that's been the goal of this teaching, is kind of learning not to be identified, but to be in the world and not of it. You have to be practical in your life. I once considered like becoming a monk and living up in the mountains. I did actually go to live in a monastery, but I think it doesn't really make sense. So you have to just live your life and be in it, but not be so affected by everything and get, caught into this drama of the story. So letting go of the story of who I think I am and just being who I am without a story is the best thing I can do. So even with HappyCow, it's been sort of a blessing that if I'm able to step back out of the role of the HappyCow guy, that's another identity, right? Very difficult to drop, but it's definitely something I'm working on, like letting go of that even, and just being here without any story like that. So I think that's really the most ideal way to be. And a lot of psychology and a lot of people focus on improving themselves and becoming a better person. There's nothing wrong with that. There are sort of stages in that. But if you step out of it to a bigger view, my feeling really is that, does that change whether you'll have a next life, or does it, it affects the world in a good way. Like the cleaner we live our lives, the better person we are in our life. It affects the world in a positive way. But is it the reality and totality of who I am? Like I say, it's a story that we're telling ourselves. And as long as we do that, we're caught in this, kind of this mouse wheel running around, trying to look at my story, my life, what's happening to me, versus questioning who is me? Where does this me come from? Who is the I who's having this thought? Like turning the mind onto itself and finding really a deeper sense of who I am through that. So being quiet, feeling connected to the universe. So that's all possible right here and now without any work on your ego. For most people, I would say like some people, there are certain issues people have that they're just not ready to take on that concept, to let go of that concept. But it's available.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much the teaching that I've been following. So when I went to Robert Adams passed away, he was here in LA. And then I met a woman named Shanti Mai, and she's holding the lineage of an ashram that's a couple thousand years old. And their main practice is Gayatri Mantra. And so it's a prayer not for yourself, but for everyone of the world, including the animals, to bring light into their lives and peace into their lives. And so that's one of the main things is practicing Gayatri, chanting. And I'll incorporate that into HappyCow a lot. So like before sending out newsletters or releasing something, like, there's prayers that go into it. There's also the power of numbers and using 9, 18, 81, 108. In the website, you can find those things incorporated in terms of the way things look and so forth. But yeah, so she's also non-dualistic, but she embraces shaman and other, the Taoist teachings and teachings. So it's kind of a mix of teachings, and I appreciate all of them. I think they're all pointers for turning within, and they all have a certain value at different times. But in the big picture, I just feel I am nothing. I'm free in myself. That's where the freedom is just not being something. I didn't grow up to have created HappyCow and be the HappyCow guy. I am right here, right now. And that's what's most important to me.
I really appreciate you sharing so deeply. I'm a couple questions about, your spirituality. Do you have like a daily meditation or any like particular, spiritual texts that you are studying frequently, or kind of like, how does the ongoing development of your spirituality look? I think you alluded to a little bit of it, kind of you incorporate into your business of HappyCow, but how do you also incorporate it into your daily life?
Right. So I've never been one for routine. That's one of the biggest problems I had with living in a monastery. It was very difficult. I do every day take time and especially the moment when you first wake up, before your mind comes back, before the story of who you are, what you need to do that day, there's a period of silence right there. And you can extend it out. So maybe it's just a couple seconds when you first notice, wake up, and then you start to remember, oh, I got to get up. Oh, I have this. Oh, shoot, that's today, But if you stop right there and do some introspection, just sit in the stillness of that moment for an extended period of time. I think that's one of the best things I can do for the day is to have a quiet morning and then lead that into, go into doing stretching and some yoga before jumping into work. When I'm stressed out, I will stop and, I catch myself and I'm like, oh, I'm thinking too much about something. I might go through a mala of beads and something like that, of doing Gayatri mantra or just being still. So walking also in nature, walking on the beach, going for a hike, drinking tea. So I do almost every day drink oolong tea, and ideally a ceremony with a teapot and cups, like to do it that way. But even just having a good cup of matcha and being quiet and feeling the tea and being quiet, I think those are all good ways to kind of drop into this moment.
Yeah.
Stepping away from, stress of life.
Hey there, just a few words about the incredible show sponsors for today's episode, and then we'll dig right back in. This show is brought to you by Feel Free from Botanic Tonics. This product is unlike anything I've ever had before. No joke. It's made with kava root and other ancient plants, and just half a shot gives me this incredible sense of focused flow and productivity. And I love to take just half a shot right before I work out. I take it with my pre-workout, and it takes my workouts to the next level. It is seriously unlike anything I've ever had. It's also an incredible productivity tool for any big work projects that you have, or long periods of time where you just need to be super focused in flow state and get a lot of shit done. So if you want to give this a shot, you can go to botanictonics.com and use code DRAGON at checkout to get 40% off your first order. No joke, 40% off with code DRAGON. That's feel free from botanictonics.com, code DRAGON. Feel free, feel good. I love that. I'm a big fan of many of those practices, including matcha. That's part of my morning kind of ritual, is just enjoying a nice cup of matcha. Also, kind of that first waking period, I often do my meditation right after I wake up, and I rarely fall back asleep. If I'm really tired and my body needs it, I'll fall back asleep. I do mantra-based meditation, transcendental meditation myself personally, just because, I kind of have like a very overactive brain, and mantras kind of help me like settle down into, that inner part of myself. And nature is such an incredible way to just get in touch with your spirituality, whether it's a walk on the beach or just, getting out in the forest or any aspect of nature is so powerful. I was reading a book this morning, or actually listening to an audio book, and it was discussing spirituality. And, it posed the question is like, where do you feel that spiritual connection? Is it when you're, in church praying? Is it when you're in nature? Is it, when you're meditating? Is it some other thing? And for me, the first thing that came into mind was like nature. It's like so easy for me to feel that divine connection when I'm in nature, because there's just, I don't know if that's just how I'm wired, but I really, I believe nature is such a powerful way to connect with the divine. I really appreciate you sharing so deeply about your spirituality. That was really awesome for me. I wanted to circle back a little bit to work, just to kind of understand your, work-life balancing. So you'll go away for a week or two. Like, how many weeks are you working before you go, like, take a trip? And then how many trips a year are you taking?
It depends.
Yeah, okay.
It depends. Prior to COVID, every other week.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's great.
So I think
you'd work a week, take a week off.
I think in 2019, I went to Asia like 4 times, and Europe 4 times in 2019, and South America and Central America all in 2019. This year, I've been on a number of trips. I went to Asia twice. I went to a vegan festival in South Korea. Went to Thailand twice. I was in Costa Rica, in Chile, separate trips. All of these are separate trips. I went to Plant-Based Expo in New York, and I went to Dutch Antilles. But less than I'd like. I was planning to travel a lot more than this, but I'm trying to get to 100 countries before I die. That's a little goal, and I like ideally living in countries, and staying longer, but that's not possible. So I'll go for short trips. So it varies, but right now it's probably about a fifth of the year is spent traveling.
No, that's still significant.
Probably 20%.
That's still a significant part.
Yeah.
I really am excited for, you mentioned the feature in the app where you would actually be able to let people know, like, hey, you're traveling in this particular area. And, if you're like also vegan and want to meet up, because for me going vegan, I've done this through Instagram, you know what I mean? Like when I go travel, like I'm somewhat of a content creator, around kind of like the vegan fitness world. And like one of my favorite things to do is meet up with other kind of like, vegan fitness people in other parts of the world. Like, for my, 40th birthday, we went to Tulum, and I met up with some of like my friends that Instagram friends that I had never met in person, but I got to meet up with them, there. And I think it would be great. I think that would be an incredible feature in the app because.
So, yeah. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, you can already do that, actually. There's not part about meeting up, but not setting a meeting. Like, we don't have that feature yet to schedule a time. But you can already search members for interest tags like fitness or bodybuilding or digital nomad or whatever it is that you find interesting. So you can search for like vegans in a specific area who have those interests, and you can write to them, and you can do that through the app or the website. The website's free to use. So a lot of people have found their best friend, have even found, I've heard some soulmate stories. It's pretty amazing that people are using it and finding it. We haven't publicized it much. You can search for singles that way. We're not advocating it in that usage, but it's possible if you want to do that. And yeah, so that will be built out in time even more. But you can already search for people who share common interests in a specific city, and then say, hey, what's up? I'm traveling to Santa Cruz, wherever it is you're going. And with some success. So I think I've heard people, have been using that, and it's been working out, even though it hasn't been publicized.
Well, that's great to hear. The thing I like about, connecting with other vegans is that there's kind of like a natural kind of value alignment with other vegans. You know what I mean? And not all, but I feel like oftentimes people that are vegan are a bit more focused on kind of like their health as well as kind of like their impact in the world, whether it, kind of making it more positive and less negative. So I think that's really beautiful.
I was going to say, we also have a calendar. It's not on the apps, but if you look on the website, the bottom left corner of navigation, you can see veg events. So if you're just looking for festivals to connect with other vegans all around the world, we have a calendar. And I was going to mention too, that there's also ambassadors. So we have over 580 ambassadors worldwide, and they are like these super users who are well connected often in their community. They know their city really well. And so you can try reaching out to them as well. If you're coming to a new city, just say, hey, I found you on HappyCow and you're an ambassador. You can send a private message to them. What are the best places to connect with other vegans in that city?
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So you can use it that way too.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I traveling and meeting up with like-minded people is like, it makes travel so fun. Because, then, if you connect with locals in the area you're visiting, it just takes that like trip experience to, a much deeper level. Or even if they're not local there, but they've been like, they're staying there for months at a time and you're just coming for a week, and they can just show you all their favorite places, and they're going to be great because it's going to include great vegan food and, other things like that. So I'm curious, kind of switching gears just a little bit, kind of your own journey with, kind of like health and fitness, because, in preparation for this interview, I listened to some things. I know when you first went vegan, you're eating a lot more like vegan junk food. And now as you've gone through your journey, like kind of like walk us through that transformation a little bit.
So it's interestingly, everybody has a different story around their health. I was actually very unhealthy as a child. When I was 2 years old, I was hospitalized. People didn't know what was wrong with me. And it turned out I had strep throat, but nobody looked at my throat, but I nearly died from that. And I had a kidney that wasn't functioning. I had kidney surgery, and I had other health constitutional problems that were just making it difficult. But nonetheless, when I went vegan, I did eat junk food, and it took a while till I realized that was affecting me in a negative way. After college and did some work doing therapy and so forth, once I started traveling, made money by teaching English, and I also got trained in massage and physical therapy. So I was doing body work and did need to take care of myself. I watched my posture. I was building muscles and spending time in the gym, focusing on my body mechanics all the time. And so I have a background in that, which is good because I kind of know a lot about self-care, taking care of carpal tunnel from using the mouse
Mhm.
too much. And like if I've been sitting, I don't sit at a desk. I'm sitting now, but I walk on a treadmill desk
Mm.
most of the time. I quickly found out, like, if I'm sitting every day, my back is going to, I had no idea what it would be like to have your back go out until it happened to me. Even when I was massaging and helping other people, working with a chiropractor, I didn't know what it felt like until it actually happened to me. So, yeah, I think definitely there's self-care every day. I'm not, like I said, I'm not good with discipline of being diligent on things. I have a gym I go to sometimes. I just did a session with this guy, John Pierre.
Mm.
I don't know if you know JP, he's like vegan fitness trainer to the stars. I worked with Joaquin Phoenix um, and flipping right now, a number of celebrities anyhow. Get some like advice from him to kind of have a better routine that works for me. But yeah, I think it's different for everybody. Definitely now as I age and because of my constitution, especially, and my genetics. So I did get like some of the genetics done, and both my parents have heart problems, and that's more of a genetic thing than a dietary thing. But my diet used to be fairly good. I did get certified in nutrition when I was young and thought about that a lot. But it just more recently in the last few years, I realized that I need to be cautious about even plant-based cholesterol and keeping that down. And I do sometimes SOS free. So I've been no salt, no oil, no sugar, which is extremely difficult. But I found out that I'll have perfect cholesterol scores if I do that. And I do take some supplements that kind of help balance things out. I use ashwagandha and holy basil to kind of keep blood pressure down. So that's another one that's more hereditary. Even though I have very little salt in my diet and so forth, I still suffer from like slight elevated, moderate blood pressure. I think it's lack of extreme exercise. I should be doing more aerobic stuff and rather than just walking, and I think that would help.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. I'm considered fairly healthy despite all my constitutional problems.
Yeah.
If I wasn't vegan, for sure I'd be dead by now. Even as a vegan, I think there's so much improvement. I've been like on a raw diet. I've been tried a lot of different things, but I eat basically whole food, plant-based, and little oil, little salt.
Yep.
I try to avoid processed foods and deep fried foods, but I love going to vegan festivals and I'm always in restaurants and they're like inviting me to meals. And what am I going to do?
Yeah.
But I get like this beautiful presentation in front of me.
Yeah. Hey there, just a few words about the incredible show sponsors for today's episode, and then we'll dig right back in. Today's show is brought to you by Fit Rich Vegan. If you're ready to get in the best shape of your life, double your income, and 10x your savings and investments, then this is the coaching program for you. But wait a minute, Dragon. Isn't this your coaching program? Heck yeah, it is. I spent the last 8 years mastering my fitness and my finances, and I've built an incredible coaching program with an incredible team to help you get the body of your dreams and finally achieve that level of financial success that you've been seeking. So if you want to find out if you're a good fit for the program, go to fitrichvegan.com and book your free consultation today. Or you can just DM me on Instagram with the words Fit Rich Vegan, and we can chat about if it's going to be a good fit for you. I'm committed to empowering people to actually achieve their fitness and financial goals. I spent the last 20 years trying to figure this out on my own. And what I realized is the key to doing it is not doing it alone. You have to have coaches, you have to have mentors,
and you have to be a part of masterminds. And that's exactly what Fit Rich Vegan has. It has coaches, mentors, and it is a mastermind. So again, if you're ready to book your free consultation today, go to fitrichvegan.com or drop me a DM on Instagram.
Yeah, for me, the way I've kind of made it work is like I shoot for 80 to 90% of my intake of food is like, whole food plant based. And then 10 to 20% can be like, vegan junk or vegan processed food. So that way I kind of get the best of both worlds. I can like, if 80% of my life's eating is fairly, healthy and whole food plant based, and 10 to 20% is, the more processed stuff. Like I think, I could probably eke out a few more healthful years if I was, 100% whole food plant based. But then, there's so much joy in like I was just talking on an Instagram live earlier today, like I found this really delicious plant-based bulgogi that literally like reminded me of before I went vegan, because I used to love Korean barbecue. And then I kind of, as someone who became vegan in the last 3 years, I thought that was like something I'd never get to experience again. And lo and behold, 6 months ago, my wife brought it back from the store and I had it. And I was like, oh my God, this is so freaking good. This like literally reminds me of what I ate as a non-vegan. And so for me, that's just like kind of, experiencing the full kind of richness and expression of life that is available. And, I think there's a place for products like that because it makes, going vegan infinitely more accessible, which is, better for the environment and better for the animals. And ultimately, there's even been a lot of studies done that like, people who are having like a plant-based burger over like a ground meat burger, like their health outcomes scientifically like proven to be significantly better. So now, would it be better to, have a, black bean burger versus a kind of mock meat burger? Yeah, but it's like there's different degrees and whatnot. So, yeah.
As long as you like whatever keeps you on track. I mean, you want people to be happy with their food and not feel limited.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it. I think there's, there's a lot of things. I also do intermittent fasting.
As do I.
I stop eating after a certain hour, and challenging, especially like when I want to go out with friends and stuff.
Yeah.
I think it helps. So I'm continuing with that.
So you stop eating earlier in the day and then you fast up until dinner?
No, like I fast from 5 p.m.
on
till the next day.
Okay. Yeah. So I do the opposite. So, and I know what you're doing is ultimately better because it's much better for your body to go to sleep on an empty stomach than it is full.
Exactly.
But like,
it's difficult.
It is so hard because I like to feel full before I go to sleep.
Right.
And every once in a while I play around with it and I do it, and I can tell that my body feels better the next day, but it's like emotionally challenging for me to go to bed hungry. So I admire your ability to do that.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, as we kind of wrap this up, I really appreciate you giving me, so much of your time. What are you most excited about, kind of, whether that be anything with HappyCow or any other kind of things that you're doing in your life that, you would be willing to share with us?
There's a lot going on these days. I mean, I've been super busy. There's a lot of partnerships in the works and things like that. But at the same time, I think HappyCow's, I want to let everybody know HappyCow's a service that's community run. It's peer-to-peer. It basically relies on users to update, add content, and get involved. So if you're interested in getting more involved, definitely consider becoming an ambassador. Or just, when you go out to eat, take photos and upload them. It helps. If there's anything that's inaccurate, a lot of places have shifted hours and so forth because of COVID. So if you find something like that, please update it. Everybody who uses the service can update, and we rely on people to do that. I think like the times right now, all of the movement in the vegan space, we kind of had a little pushback because of the economy.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, like if you know Beyond and Oatly and some of the stocks, how they've gone down in value, there's been a lot less money on the table for new companies, although there are so many new companies these days. And it's incredible what's happening in the vegan world in terms of options at fast food restaurants and the ease and availability. Like it's so easy right now to go vegan. And it's really the best time to do it. There's so many good options and you won't miss out on anything really.
Yeah.
There's pretty much everything you do that's not vegan can be made and be just as good. So it's exciting to see what would happen in the next few years, next 5 years. I think we're waiting for a couple things like in vitro clean meats to come out and become more popular. I've often been thinking that will be the end of meat once the price of meat actually is cheaper than, like the price of clean meat, lab-grown meat is cheaper than the real thing, which would then remove all the animal suffering and help the environment and do everything else. It won't help people's health. It won't, but I think a lot of people will never want to give up meat. That's just something I've concluded. There's some people in their life, they're going to have to live out their life probably. Yeah. And they may not give up meat unless they're forced to, but I don't see that happening. Yeah. And then if the in vitro meats come to become affordable in the next few years, I think that might be a huge game changer because of really, like, think about McDonald's or Burger King. If they start using this clean meat instead of and there's no choice, real meat, because that price is just astronomical compared to the clean meat. People will question where their food comes from, like I did. And I think that might really be a change in in the animal agriculture on a mainstream scale, maybe really hits a turning point where already it's happening with dairy, because dairy is a little bit easier to replicate in some ways. I think that's coming in the next few years. I'm excited to see where that goes. I'd love to see a vegan world, obviously. But you got to be practical too in it. And hopefully within a few years, that could happen. We don't have to deal with the concept of these huge animal agriculture suffering.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, at the kind of top of the recording, you talked about that cow farm on the side of the 5. I know exactly what you're talking about because my wife's family is in Santa Monica and Huntington Beach.
Okay, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, so we drive down, a few times a year, and it's so sad, and it's very hard to see. And yeah, I mean, I remember when I wasn't vegan, it was hard to see, because you just look at it and you're like, that is not right. Like you can just see it, smell it, and feel it. It just does not feel right. So, but, I think you make a great point. I think, if, clean meat were to become cheaper than, farmed meat, then, because usually it's like all these companies are driven by money, right? So like there's so much subsidy kind of within, the animal industry. And if that were removed and then it became cheaper to go clean, then it's like the money's just going to go, like the money always goes where there's more money to be made. So I think you make a really good point there. Any last words of wisdom or anything else you would like to share with the audience before we close this down?
Yeah, just thanks for listening. Thanks for this opportunity for me to tell my story. I think I've avoided it. I'm kind of introverted. It's difficult to do this for me. But yeah, if you ever have feedback or ideas of any ways to improve HappyCow, I'm always open to hearing. I love it when people reach out, and you can reach me through Instagram, through HappyCow. It'll get forwarded to me, or just Eric at HappyCow. Great. And yeah, thanks again.
Awesome. Eric, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in. And remember, literally everything can be used as an opportunity to learn, to heal, to grow, and to transform.
So whatever is going on in your life, choose to consciously and proactively harness that energy and use it to alchemize your life to the next level. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend or on your favorite social media and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. As always, you can find me at Justin David Carl on Instagram and all the socials, as well as at alchemizelife.com on the web. Until the next time, sending you lots of energy and plenty of dragon magic.